Trump, right? Trump did an ABC interview with an anchor, his first time doing an interview. And I want to play a little bit of that because I wasn't able to actually see the full thing. So I want to get into a little bit of it and see what it was because they was interviewing him based off of his first 100 days in Oval Office, but it turned into a debate.
This is an ABC News special from inside the White House.
When you step
to the economy
up for this, so it is an
Oval Office
for a great opportunity.
This is the Resolute desk, which is really something very spectacular. There's nothing quite like it, and they give you a choice of about 7 different desks, but this is the one I chose. Ronald Reagan had it, FDR had it, a few people had it, but I found it to be the most beautiful.
It is amazing.
This is an amazing space, and amazing maybe architecturally wonderful, but amazing for what it represents. It represents the U.S., and if properly used, a lot of good things can happen.
I see Ronald Reagan over there.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan.
Right to your left.
Being in the
No, I don't want to do the interview part. I just want to get straight to the talk.
Congrats, a little through the complaint raised that. I think it's a big
Is the most significant. It's special. 100 days into your second term. So what's the one thing, just one thing, that you think is the most significant thing you've done so far in these 100 days?
Well, I think maybe the border is the most significant because our country was really going bad. They were allowing people to come in from prisons, as you know, and you've heard me say it, but you've heard a lot of people say it. Prisons, mental institutions, gang members, murderers. We had many murders, 11,888, they think. Some murdered more than one person.
You know the whole full number. Thank God we got a president that's more coherent than the last one.
So you had murderers coming in, you had everybody coming in, and not just South America, from all over the world. They were emptying their prisons into our country. And now it's totally closed down. And you've seen just yesterday, they announced 99.9%. Nobody thought that could happen. And it happened quickly, very quickly. And I think that's very significant. But we're doing other things that are very significant. Results will take a little bit longer because it's one of those, you know, it's complicated. It's many years of trading abuse. We've been abused by other countries for years and years. They laughed at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we're fixing it. And I think that's going to be very, very important. But
I have a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, I would really say that the border is so important. You know, just
and we'll get there.
let
Immigration,
that
huge,
happen.
and we're going to get there. But I want to start with the economy, the number one issue for so many people, for just about everybody. It's one of the main reasons that you're back in this office, and now we have this trade.
Why do they just skip over the border like it's not a big deal? Why do they skip over the fact that the border was one of the biggest problems that we experienced over the last 4 years, where they told everybody to lock in place? Our Kamala Harris and Joe Biden acted like we needed to actually pass a bill in Congress or some kind of reconciliation in Congress in order for them to get funding to stop people from coming over in the border and enforcing the laws that we already had on the books. Kamala Harris campaigned, and she ran around and kept saying that we needed a bill, and Biden too, that we needed a bill. We got to get Congress involved to get people to stop from coming over here illegally, when in reality they were funding them for coming over here illegally. Why do we keep skipping over that like that's not a big deal? He literally made them look stupid by enforcing the laws that are already on the books, and we didn't have to pass any new bills in Congress to do it. Why do we try to act like we don't want to give Trump credit for that? We got to start giving people their flowers at the same time that we trying to hold them accountable. We just skip over that like it's not a big deal.
War with China that Moody's and other analysts say is going to cost American families thousands of more dollars per year. And there is a lot of concern out there. People are worried. Even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, they did sign up for it, actually, and this is what I campaigned on. I said that we've been abused by other countries at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were losing $3 to $5 billion a day on trade. We were losing $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year, not sustainable. They were taking advantage of us like they've never. I could have left it that way, and at some point there would have been an implosion like nobody's ever seen. But I said, no, we have to fix it. I've wanted to do this for many years. You know, I had the best economy during my first term. We had a tremendous economy, tremendous success. And we did tremendous numbers of tariffs on, we took in a lot of money from tariffs, China in particular, hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. We had no inflation, as you know. We had an incredible economy. We're given credit for a great economy. But I said, we have to fix this, otherwise it's just not self-sustaining.
Well, one of the things you ran on was you'd said you'd bring prices down on day one, and that it would happen fast, and that it would happen fast.
I have.
Most economists will tell you that tariffs will raise prices. So don't your tariffs cut against that promise you made to bring prices down?
No, because I had massive tariffs on China, if you remember, in my first term, and we had essentially no inflation, like around 1% inflation, which is like a perfect number. And then when Biden took over, it went through the roof. It went to probably the worst inflation we've ever had. I mean, we had an inflation nightmare. Now, if you look at what's...
And that's a fact. Nobody wants to say that inflation. What is inflation at right now? Let me look it up.
Happening now, we're only there for 100 days, as you say. And in 100 days, we took over. We had bad inflation for 4 years, for 2 years of, especially 2 years of his administration. I would say record-setting like we've never seen. They say 48 years. The worst
right
in 48
now,
years.
inflation is
much
at
worse than that.
2.3% inflation. The current U.S. inflation rate is at 2.3% within the first 100 days. And nobody talks about it, though. Everything is so bad. Prices is down. Inflation is low. And it's at 2.3%. That's one of the reasons why the Fed needs to lower interest rates so we can actually lend more cheap money since inflation is down. One of the reasons why the Fed raised rates so much was to tamp down inflation during the Biden administration. Well, now that inflation is only at 2.3%, we actually need to loosen up money so that we can have lending at a lower rate because we're not fighting against high inflation anymore. Trump did that.
Right. So now if you look at what's happened, energy is down. Gasoline hit $1.98 in a few states during the last couple of days. It was $3.50 and $4 and $4.50. But gasoline is way down. When I took over, you remember the big thing with eggs. They hit me the first week. Eggs, like it was my fault. I said, I didn't cause this problem. This problem was caused by Biden. What's the problem with eggs? And they said, they've doubled. And well, eggs are down 87% since I got involved.
A lot of that is
and
bird
by the way,
flu,
and there were
right?
plenty of eggs for Easter, which we just went through. There were plenty of eggs for Easter. They were saying you won't have enough eggs for Easter. My secretary did a fantastic job on eggs. Groceries are down. Everything's down.
Okay.
Interest rates are the same. Interest rates should be down, but we have a Federal Reserve that wants to be stubborn. They want to be cute.
We'll get to that. A couple of
Somebody
a couple
said,
weeks ago that
what
struck me.
source
You
am I
said-
using? I'm using a Y charts. Literally, you can go on to Google, type in U.S. inflation. It'll tell you based off of Bloomberg, Reuters, the AP News, Denver Post, and then it'll summarize it for you with AI, and it'll give you an AI overview, and it'll also show you the Y charts that tells you what the U.S. inflation rate monthly analysis is based off of the Consumer Price Index. So go to the Y charts, and then also you can Google it, and it'll give you that AI overview, or you can put it inside of Gemini. I use Gemini for AI a lot, and it'll give you an overview of different sources, and it'll cite its sources and tell you exactly where it got the information from. So inflation right now is at 2.3%, all right?
Concerning the tariffs, which economists say are going to raise prices, you said, quote, hang tough. Yeah. It won't be easy. You said that to the American people. Is that what Americans should expect, some hard times?
I've said that during my campaign. Look,
Henry Johns, you said Rocket bought Mr. Cooper lending. Explain more of what you're talking about. I'm curious as to what you're talking about.
We won a campaign by a lot. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by a lot. You know, we had a tremendous campaign. I said all of these things during my campaign. I said, you're going to have a transition period. We've been ripped off by every country all over the world. They're laughing at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we were. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen.
Hard times are ahead?
I don't think so. I think great times are ahead. Look, since I came in, Gas.
Why is this reporter? This reporter is trying to make a name for himself by interrupting in the middle of what he's saying.
Gasoline is down, groceries are down, egg prices are down, many things are down, just about everything. You know, you don't have the drop in fuel and energy and oil like we did. I took it from maybe $3.20, maybe more than that, down into a much lower number. When you have that kind of a drop, you're not going to have inflation.
Not now, but it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on China. Your Treasury Secretary said we basically have an embargo on China.
Look, you're trying to say something's going to happen, Terry.
No, okay, well,
nothing's going to happen.
You know business.
Terry,
I want to ask you.
I do know business.
Yes,
and
so 145% tariffs on China, and that is
that's good.
basically
that's
an
good.
embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices.
Is this an interview or is this a debate? I'm trying to understand it.
On
They
everything from
deserve it.
electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to eat it.
That's mathematics.
China probably will eat those tariffs, but at 145, they basically can't do much business with the United States. And they were making from
Always leveling up. Rocket took over servicing of Mr. Cooper. I wish I could talk more about that, but that's Stock Club information. I have an inside track on that. That's what that caught my eye when y'all put that inside of the chat. I got an inside track on that, but we're going to talk about that on Stock Club.
us $1 trillion a year. They were ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. And by the way, we have other countries that were just as bad. If you look at the European Union, it was terrible what they've done to us.
Henry John says they acquired all of Mr. Cooper loans, so now they will be servicing all of those loans. Gosh, I wish I can give y'all some insight on that. All right, I'll give y'all a little bit of insight in a minute. We'll talk about it.
Every country, almost every country in the world was ripping us off. They're not doing that anymore.
I want you to think about the boom that this country has had in small businesses, mom and pop Etsy stores, small businesses that became
They
big
haven't
businesses.
had a boom because of inflation.
Well,
the boom
what they've done
was inflationary boom. The people were wiped out with inflation. I mean,
that's
you
a fact.
read the news, you do the business
now
stuff, I
face,
assume.
Now, a lot of them built those businesses on the trading model.
Yeah, and they're going to make more money
They
now.
sourced their products overseas, and now they're looking at an extinction
I've
event.
been here.
It's a disaster for them.
I've been here for 3 months. I've taken a trade deficit down to a number that's very, very starting to get really good. I just got here. We had a country that it was not sustainable. What Biden did to this country between the open borders where criminals poured into our country, between every country in the world ripping us off on trade, it was not sustainable.
So your message to those small businesses who are saying, we can't live a month, 2 months with these tariffs. Apple got a big deal. Is there something for them?
No, not only Apple. We've got $7 to $8 trillion being invested in our country in 2 months. Biden didn't have that over a year. I mean, if you look at Biden, nobody was really investing in this country. Everybody was ripping off our country. Apple's putting up $500 billion, but that's only one of many companies. Companies are flooding into our country right now.
So your answer to the concern about the tariffs is everything's going to be hunky-dory?
Everything's going to be just fine. It wouldn't have been if I didn't do this. I had a choice. I could leave it, have a nice, easy time, but I think ultimately you would have had an implosion. Our country had inflation that was worse than they've ever had it before. You don't mention that. Why don't you mention that? We had the worst inflation probably in the history of our country.
We did.
People say 48 years. Probably in the history of our country, we had the worst inflation. And people were dying over the inflation, you know.
And you know what's so funny? That is absolutely true because I was on this show and I was documenting and breaking down that inflation was well over 9-10% month over month over month over month over month during the Biden administration. That is a fact. That is 100% a fact. The reason why the Fed started raising rates, the reason why you got, all right, so let me just break it down from this lens. The reason why you guys are facing 7% interest rates on home buying is because the Fed was raising rates to tamp down inflation that was well over 10% in some places, depending on where you live. But everybody forgot about that. That is the reason why you have interest rates why it is and why you guys are complaining about not being able to buy a home today. Does anybody remember that? Do you know why you are facing high interest rates today on everything from credit cards to interest rates on the homes that you buy to personal loans to everything, money being tight for you to be lended as a small business? The reason why they raise interest rates, which is one of the things that Trump tamped down, and now that we at 2.3% inflation and falling rapidly every single day, while at the same time taking in billions of dollars every single day from other countries that are paying tariffs and having manufacturing come back to the United States of America, we have multiple different things benefiting the United States of America at the same time. And people are talking about what they are going to experience, and they haven't even experienced yet, but we know what you experienced during the Biden administration. So we could have left things the way that they are. We could have let this whole country continue to implode. We could have let jobs just continue to go off overseas, and we could have let other countries continue to get stronger as a result of it. But he's actually doing something and benefiting America, which is one of the reasons why he keeps telling the Fed to lower rates, because inflation is no longer high. And now we have to make sure that we have everybody have earning income go higher. So now, instead of it being an inflation problem, there needs to be an affordability issue that is addressed. And because people are not addressing that, now they want to sit here and talk about what Trump has did over the last 100 days. You've benefited significantly over the last 100 days. What are you talking about? We still try to deal with the fallout from the Biden administration.
Know that. Now the grocery prices are coming down, the energy prices are coming down, gasoline's coming down. It's all heading in the right direction.
Okay, let's move on to immigration.
Coming up.
Yeah, this is an interesting interview. Very, very interesting.
It is an undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods.
All right, y'all can watch the rest of that on ABC if y'all wanted to. I just wanted to get a little bit of a wet my beak a little bit and see what's going on. Make sure you guys hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Let me read a couple of super chats. I love what I do. I love this job. I got the best job in the world. I'm already familiar with what's going on with Mr. Cooper and Rocket. The reason that I'm familiar with what's going on with Mr. Cooper and Rocket and why I'm able to give y'all insight on Stock Club and Block Club from a real estate perspective is because I don't know if I've told everybody this in the public, but I told the bag chasers, I actually showed the bag chasers and stuff like that. But I used to, the job that I just recently retired from, I retired from Flagstar Bank. And at Flagstar Bank, I was director of user experience, and I oversaw everything, and I had to learn everything there was to know about the bank in order for us to develop better applications and products for people to be able to use and service so that they can make a lot of money. One thing that I learned about working at Flagstar Bank, which gave me more insight on how I could be more beneficial to the bag chasers, was I understood the ways, even more ways that the banks made money. One of the ways that the banks and Flagstar itself generated a lot of revenue was through servicing loans. So we were one of the number one servicer of loans inside of the United States of America. A lot of people don't know that. And we increased our revenue because the amount that we charged, we white labeled the product. How do I know? Because I designed it. Me and my team designed the product that we white labeled. So other banks, right, they would come in and they would do business with us. And because they were into lending, but they wasn't into servicing is one of the ways that we generated a lot of revenue. During the pandemic, the servicing fees based off of the contracts that we were charging to other banks that you paid your mortgage to, you paid your car note to, you paid everything to, we charged more because that was inside of the contract. So we generated a lot of revenue. We generated so much revenue to where we then combined with New York Community Bank, which I got a nice package with that. That's another reason why I was telling you guys that I had generated even more revenue, and they asked me to stay on longer because we were transitioning. And so I got a huge bag with that. But then eventually we sold one of our mortgage departments or one of our servicing departments over to Mr. Cooper. So when we sold it over to Mr. Cooper already had their own product because they were making a lot of money in servicing the loans. Mr. Cooper then took over that product, and they asked me if I wanted to go to a different part of the bank. I said, nope, I don't have the time. I don't have the capacity. I got to focus 100% on this. So that's when I then retired again at the end of last year. Mr. Cooper then gave over or sold over a lot of their loans over to Rocket. So again, this is why I tell y'all to join a Patreon. I'm already telling y'all stuff that's going to happen before it happens, but I can't talk about it in a public forum until it already takes place because of the agreement that I made in order to get the huge bag that I got before I left at the end of last year. Y'all need to tap into the Patreon. The best time to join the Patreon is the beginning of the month. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. You have to join the Patreon, all right? I talk about Stock Club. I talk about Block Club. I talk about banking. I talk about exactly how it is that they generate revenue, why we invest in certain companies, which companies are important for you to then stay put in, how you can protect and diversify your assets, what's going to happen on the banking front. If you're going to invest in banking, this is the way that you do it. These are the ways in which they generate revenue. This is why we don't want to take out this particular loan. I talk about all of this stuff inside of Block Club, and I show you the receipts. So I can only give you the snapshot here because we got the rest of the show that we got to tap into. But yeah, there's a lot to learn. That is the place that I used to work at. I was working at Flagstar Bank. We generated a lot of revenue from servicing the loans, in which we then combined with New York Community Bank, sold over a division of the company over to Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper is now selling over that division over to Rocket. See, Des, you get it now. Thanks, AD. Now I know on my loan switched from Flagstar to Mr. Cooper. That's why. And then we rebranded. So I was in charge of the whole rebranding also. So you know how Flagstar used to be the red with the white, like the little burgundy with the white, and then we switched over to yellow and black. Now you know. Now you know. And again, I showed the receipts inside of the Patreon, but I couldn't talk about it because obviously I didn't want to be doxxed while I was there. So it is a lot of people talk about it. Very few people can break it down and tell you about it because they haven't did it. I've been in it in real life. I know it both from the corporate side and from the entrepreneurial side. And you leverage the information that you have and to continue to get to the bag. And I don't reserve anything. I give everything to my chasers. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. Royal Heart says, what is white labeled? Well, being white labeled means, all right, so you're right. I need to explain that. White labeling means that you take a product. So let's say, for example, in e-commerce. Well, I'm not going to say e-commerce. I'm going to speak to it from the banking side. So let's say, for example, one of the things in user experience that you have to do is you have to be able to determine which parts you're going to customize and which parts you're going to keep generic. The reason that you want to keep it generic as far as the iconography, the look and the feel of it is because you want to be able to rebadge that with somebody else's logo and have them service the loan on your platform. So we had all of the infrastructure to be able to stand this up. We had moved over into the cloud, right? We could service the loan. So when you go in and you pay your bank, let's say you're paying your mortgage or your car note or your credit cards or whatever, you go in, you log into the application or you log in online, and then you make the payment on the platform, and the platform makes it easier for you to navigate around. You know, you can find what you're looking for. You can find your statements. You can do all of that. Well, there are certain credit unions and smaller banks and all of these places that don't want to stand up the infrastructure that allows for you to go in and do it. So what they do is they contact a bank like Mr. Cooper or Chase or Flagstar. Flagstar, again, was one of the biggest servicers. We are the ones that have the infrastructure to be able to stand up a product. So then we white label it, meaning that you bring in a product, we import your loans, and so when you signing into their platform, you think you signing into whatever platform you signing into, you're really signing into our platform, and we white labeled it. So we made it generic enough, but it's intuitive enough to where it's beautiful, but then all you're doing is seeing a different name at the top of it, or you may see some different colors on it, and we were able to easily customize that and then be able to service the loan on our platforms. So basically, we could modify it to fit whatever narrative that we needed to, depending on who it is that needed their loan service. We had a robust enough platform. You being able to call in, service your loans. When you calling into something, you calling into the service center, we're able through Salesforce to see exactly who the customer is. And then through that, we can then customize the different prompts or whatever, or we can tell our agents to say, hey, welcome to such and such community service. Hey, welcome to this credit union. Hey, welcome to Flagstar Bank. Hey, welcome to this. And so we've white labeled the product so that you can actually pay your mortgage or pay whatever it is that you want to pay, thinking that you're using their product, you're using our product, and all we did was rebrand a name on it, Rebrand the name, rebrand the colors. When you call in the customer service, you call in our customer service agents. So as a user experience professional and director, you then have to go in and make sure you account for every single thing that they do in the bank, so that when you then pitch in other companies to come in and be the servicer of their mortgages, it's easier for them to be able to move over to your platform and just import the loans. Y'all really do need to join the Patreon, honest to God. You really do need to join the Patreon. If you are not a bag chaser, you will not get this level of information, as well as all of the information you need to make an informed decision financially, corporate-wise, business-wise, all of that. You genuinely need to join in. Honestly, you really need to join in. All right. A lot of people gatekeep this type of information. I don't gatekeep for my people. A lot of people gatekeep. I don't gatekeep. I give the information. People always talking about generational wealth, or they're black people, or the system. You don't know nothing about what systems is going on. You don't have no clue about what's happening behind the scenes. No clue at all. And I couldn't talk about it publicly, a lot of this stuff, but it informs what I'm telling people on how you need to make a more informed decision on a regular basis.